Hello everybody, this is Jaron from MarineAndReef.com, and today on our budget reef tank build series, we're going to show you guys how to feed your corals. Now, if you've wondered why we haven't covered this so far, it's because you can get a huge amount of success in your tank without feeding corals. Now, there's some exceptions to this, but the vast majority of corals that we keep, and in fact, all of the corals in this tank behind me, get the overwhelming majority of their nutrition from the lights, which is why picking out a light is so important. But the thing with corals is more than any other animal, almost the coral's entire body is devoted to eating. The whole coral polyp, which is basically the whole animal, is just one giant mouth. So these animals are obviously designed to eat things, and they tend to grow faster, look more plump and full and more attractive looking if we can feed them. So today we're going to go over what are the most common kinds of coral food, how to use them, and then we're going to feed some corals in this tank behind me. The first type of coral food we like to show off is amino acids. Now, amino acids, some people are going to not call this a food. I am going to call this a food. So the first question is, what is an amino acid? Well, the best way I could describe it is amino acids are building blocks of protein. So this is like protein powder for your corals. So just like when you take protein powder to build your muscles up as you're trying to bulk up and get stronger, the amino acids are going to do the same thing for your corals. They're not really a food per se, but they're just kind of raw amino acids, raw protein, and adding this to your foods or directly to the water can help the corals bulk up and put on flesh fast. Another thing with amino acids is there's a lot of research that shows the part of the food that triggers the feeding response or that full open plush coral is the amino acids. So by adding these to your tank, you're going to get much more plump, full, happy, attractive looking corals. The next food we're going to show off are these LPS pellets. And I'm just going to call this a large particle coral food. So you could use a coral food that's like a chunk of frozen shrimp. You could use fish pellet food that you feed to your corals. I like this Marin stuff because it's specifically designed as a coral food and it's a pellet, which I think makes it pretty easy. This is good for very largemouth coral. So in particular, I really love this elegance coral in the corner of the tank. I think it should eat something like this without a problem. But there's a lot of corals in there that these pellets are just going to be way too big to even fit in their mouth. And for that, we're going to use this sea chem phytoplankton. And this goes into our third category, which is plankton foods. So some corals have very small polyps or mouths. And because they're so small, they're not going to eat large, chunky things like those pellets. So this phytoplankton is just going to look kind of like green water, but there actually is some particulates in it. And we're going to use this to feed the gorgonians and the leather corals behind us. We're going to use a coral feeder to show you guys what that looks like. So without further ado, let's open up this food, show you guys how you use it. So when I feed my aquarium some coral food, the first thing I personally like to do is turn off the pumps. And this is both so that the food doesn't immediately blow away and so that the skimmer doesn't start skimming out the food we're going to feed. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by just turning everything off. And now we're going to get some food ready. So the first food we'll do is this reef phytoplankton, which is going to be for most of the small things inside this aquarium. Now there are some instructions on how much of this to dose, but just keep in mind it's a food. So if you overdose it, you just overfeed and your tank gets dirty. It's not like your parameters are all out of whack. So what I like to do with this is just open up the bottle, pour some in our handy dandy measuring cup. And then we're going to go ahead and suck this up to feed it to the corals. But before we do that, I thought I'd show you this Brightwell coral amino. One reason why I like this amino acid versus some of the others is the way you use it. You can kind of see that it comes in this like dropper. It's very concentrated. And again, it's a food, so there's dosing instructions, but just know if you dose too much, you just overfeed. And I find my favorite way to use this is to suck up a little bit and just add it to the food mix. If you thaw out some frozen fish food, you can also add it to your frozen fish food mix. And I just think this is one of the easiest ways to use amino acids versus some you need to pour in or mix up beforehand. You just add this to your food. Once we have our food mixture, this is an ice cap coral feeder. Some people use a turkey baster, but I like this guy because it has a very fine tip on it. We're just going to mix up the solution, squeeze the bulb, and suck some in. Then we're going to go over to the tank, find some corals and feed them. So I'm going to start with this fuzzy gorgonian up in the front. And you can see it's just putting a fine mist over the coral polyps. And they're reacting a little bit. Now some of that could be because I'm putting some force on them, but some of it is they're actually closing up around the coral food that we're putting in there. And how about we try the feather worms, because they're a plankton eater too. Oh, probably brushed it a little too hard. We'll go to this big fuzzy guy in the back. Well, that was it for the plankton food. Now we're going to show you guys the pellet food. All right, so I got myself some of our Fauna Marin LPS pellet food. This is for large, fleshy corals, and I got a towel because I like to feed this by hand. So you can see there's some pellets on in there. I'm just going to take a pinch of them, and I'm going to lower it down to this elegance coral here. The biggest trouble I have with feeding these pellet food is sometimes the fish like to steal them, so we'll see if that's a problem today. We may also get the shrimp doing some stealing too. And you can see the fish are definitely interested. They'll eat a little bit of what kind of came up with my fingers. But you can see the coral closing around. Oop, pellets. And that's basically all there is to feeding your corals. Now what I like to do is I'm going to leave these pumps and filtration off just for a few more minutes. That'll give the coral some time to react and capture all that food. After about 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to turn everything back on, and then we're back to normal again. If you liked today's video, then like and subscribe for more. We'll have more helpful Reef Aquarium videos to come.